Der er lige de sidste dernede, der skal komme ind, så er vi ved at være der. Men velkommen til den første eftermiddagssession, hvor der vil komme 3 oplæg her. Og det første oplæg er, som I kan se her, fra Holland. I'm very proud to introduce Linda Moll from the Scheepvaartmuseum, the National Museum of in Amsterdam, where Linda is head of exhibitions and interpretations. And Linda and her colleague have made a wonderful museum. If you not have been there, I can highly recommend it. And a museum which focuses on visitors when you see it, I would say. But as Linda will talk more about now, also in the process of making the exhibitions and the new museum. So please welcome Linda.
Thank you, Martin. I hope everything works. Yeah. Can you also hear me in the back of the room? Yes? Well, I must say I'm most honored to be invited for the second time by the Danish Museum Association to talk about my museum, the National Maritime Museum in Amsterdam, where I've been working as head of exhibition over the last 14 years. A museum that has been reopened 4.5 years ago after a big renovation and refurbishment. I spoke 2.5 years ago in the conference in Kolding, if I pronounce it right, about the whole process and the choices we made then. I was asked this time to share the experience we had after reopening, so over the last 4.5 years. And as Martin already pointed out, we took a quite radical approach in audience development and choosing different audience group. What I would like to do today is first give a short introduction about the museum, a bit what I did in Kolding 2.5 years ago to understand what our museum is about. I must say I did receive a lot of colleagues from Denmark over the last few years and guided them around with please come and have a visit yourself. Then I would like to focus on some facts and figures because we do permanent visitor research. And then I would like to present some of our sort of best cases, sort of program development, exhibition development, from which we learned a lot, and then a few new projects that we have ahead. But to start with the beginning, for those who haven't finished my museum, it's in the center of Amsterdam. It's housed in a building from the Dutch Golden Age, the 17th century, and it was built as a naval depot where the formal admiralty stored the equipment for the ships. It was turned into a museum at the end of the 70s. And here you can see a picture of the old museum. It was a very old traditional maritime museum which attracted about 180,000 visitors a year. And in order to renew it, we really had to reinvent ourselves. We developed a corporate story really about the brand, what we are about. And it's a story about the Dutch going abroad, seeking adventures, not staying safely behind our dikes. When we had that corporate story, the marketing department developed a new marketing strategy. We developed a new exhibition strategy. That was my part of this project. And to refurbish such a big museum, one needs lots of money. So we also needed a new fundraising strategy because the 17.5 million that costed the new refurbishment, we had to find that money ourselves. This is the entrance hall of the museum. It used to be an open courtyard. It was covered with a glass and steel roof. And the design is from a compass rose from a sea chart. So it's a maritime design on a maritime building. And it's one of the main features now when you enter the museum. And something about our exhibition development. What we did, and we did a lot of research before we closed the museum, we said, in fact, we have two main different audience groups. We have families and school groups on the one hand, and we have the more traditional museum visitor, the maritime specialist on the other hand. And we decided to develop different types of exhibitions for these different audience groups. So for the families and school groups on the one hand, we designed an experience. It's called Voyage at Sea. I'll show you a picture later. It's very much about experience and immersion into a scene we set. We have ships on our jetty, a very famous replica of a 17th century ship. And we developed 4 thematic exhibitions, storytelling exhibitions. So that on the one hand, and for these more traditional museum visitors, we decided to develop object-oriented exhibition with lots of objects, 7 in total, where it's much more about the discovery and enjoyment of our rich collection. And what we did is we put each of this type of exhibitions in different parts of the museum. So when you enter from the south side and stand on that courtyard, you can either choose east, there are the objects. You go north, that is sort of the experience wing, and west is the thematic exhibition wing. So to summarize, it was in fact quite radical. We chose to have different exhibition formats for different audience groups in different parts of the museum building, also designed by different exhibition design team. In the end, we ended up with a German design team in the east, Atelier Bruckner, and 2 English design companies in the west. So suddenly we had a German wing and an English wing, which was quite interesting, I can imagine. Lots of interesting discussions, but because we really wanted to create different atmospheres in each of the galleries. It's of course up to you as a museum. One can choose one designer, but we felt that we are a middle-sized museum, about 3,000 square meters. It becomes a bit boring after a few galleries, so we thought we would like to have lots of different atmospheres. Some of the examples to give you an idea, also what we try to reach with our different type of exhibition. This is my favorite from the East Wing. It's called the navigational instruments. The concept is simple. It's lots of navigational instruments, but well presented now in this way that everyone who enters this gallery says, wow, what is this beautiful? We used to have it in a more an old-fashioned gallery with white walls, and then everybody would pass these beautiful objects. This is an example from the West Wing, the storytelling exhibition. It's about the Golden Age, and what we did over there is to have a sort of huge paintings coming alive. This, when you go through the gallery, you meet people from the Golden Age. These were very well researched. And we have an average amount of objects there. And we use the objects there as a sort of proof to the story being told. And this is an example from our experience, Voyage at Sea. One of the 4 rooms, you stand on the deck of a ship and you experience the different emotions you have on a ship. And this is being in a storm, and we took imagery from our collection to create this experience. What we did when we developed these different exhibitions, we used visitor panels during our whole development process. Because of the comment the panels gave, we made changes in the design. It's shown here as one of the panel discussions, but within our audience-focused approach, depending on which audience group we chose, there is a difference in the design, in the storyline, also in the intensity of the experience, the multimedia techniques applied, or if you, for example, have an interactive table, we use it in a different way in the East Wing compared to the West Wing, and also the required level of foreknowledge. In this East Wing, we expect the visitor to know much more about maritime history than the families who go to the West and the North Wing. Of course, besides exhibitions, we also developed formal and informal learning programs for in the galleries. On the top row, there's an example of a school program where high school students sort of make their own promotion film to work in the Dutch harbor. We also have an exhibition on the modern day harbor of Amsterdam. And here in the lower row, an example of a program, an activity program for families with very young children with a hand puppet. It's a rat called Rhinus, who is one of the rats living on board of our replica of the 17th century ship, which is very popular with our visitors. And on the other hand, you see one of our museum guides, Ed, who is also captain of the steamer we have in our collection, the steamboat, within the library, telling stories and also using collections, but making different programs alongside the different exhibitions we have, and also evaluating these programs all the time. Some of the results. When we opened, like most museums, you have an overwhelming first year with over 400,000 visitors in 2012. It was the first year that we were completely open. And we had, that is the photograph, visitors queuing up in front of the museum. And now, over the last 3 years, we sort of stabilized around 300,000 visitors a year. And that makes us an average size museum in the museum world in Amsterdam. And we had a change in the division of audience groups. In 2013, that was the first year where I had all these figures from. We had 38% families and 54% without kids, and schools about 8%, with Dutch visitors 73% and foreign tourists about 27%, and that slightly shifted towards less families, more visitors without kids, a little bit more schools over the last year, and less people coming from the Netherlands and more foreign tourists. There is an explanation for that. I'll explain it to you in a few minutes. And then our visitor research, very important. We have every month visitor surveys with a sort of general rows of questions in which we measure the satisfaction of the visitor with the exhibitions and with the restaurant and with all the other aspects. But we also do research on different topics, for example, just with teachers from schools. We tested new formats for exhibitions, new ideas, also what to choose from, or regarding one exhibition, how we should deal with it. And also through constant evaluations of our activities, of our programming, we were able to improve what we did. Then some figures. The visitors give a rating 7.9 to 8.3 out of 10. We have a repeat visit intention between 70% and 60%. I'm not a marketeer, but the Net Promoter Score is very high, my marketing colleagues told me. And also important, the brand, het Scheepvaartmuseum, as we're called in Dutch, doubled. What was also very important for us to see in our visitor survey is that the approach we took in making this distinction between the different galleries, that it works, because families give a slightly higher rating for the exhibition in the West and North Wing compared to the East Wing, and the other way around. There's a difference of about 0.3 to 0.5 point. So, for example, a family will give an 8.2 for the Golden Age exhibition in the West Wing, while a traditional museum visitor without children will give a 7.7 for that exhibition, and the other way around. The marketing team developed a sort of personified groups. I don't know if you work with that as well in Denmark. It's called personas. And we made it very simple when we started. We had, as a representative of the families group, we had Simone as a mother of a family, and a family who doesn't go to a museum a lot, but more to theme parks and other attractions. They're very busy, so they have not a lot of time. And for the traditional museum visitor, we developed Dick. We didn't think that we would have to tell this story also abroad, but Dick is I think maybe in English you would call him Charles or something, I'm not really sure. So as a representative of the traditional museum visitor without children, and we also had a more, well, sort of hipster-like one, Mickey. She comes during museum night. But anyway, in the end, when we got the results from the visitor surveys, it turned out that all three of them came to the museum with children, but they had different needs when they came with children. To give an example, when this Simone comes with her children, and we really saw that happening in the galleries, her children go in front, they run into the museum, and she can also be a he, by the way, walks behind the children and and she wants to have a good time with the children, and that they actually learn a little bit. But when Dick or Charles comes with his children, he really wants to be the teacher. So he goes in front, it's the same exhibition, and he's looking around for text so he can tell his children what this is about. And he really wants to teach his children. It's a completely different approach of the museum. And we see the same difference when they join in activities. When we have Dick and we have, for example, a workshop type of activity, he really wants to build or make something with his children. Simone says, I heard this in panels as well, that's too complicated for me. I need help, my children need help, and I will watch my children do this activity. So there's a difference also there. So it's very important to know also when thinking of your activities, for whom do I develop these activities? And then there were the foreign tourists. We didn't define them as a separate group, but they kept asking for an audio tour. And of course, also after reopening, everybody knows who has been there, and after a big refurbishment, there is sort of black hole, because you've been working towards this big event, and then after that, and everybody says it's wonderful, and then you have the snagging list and all the other things to do, and nothing is finished yet, and the operation, you have to get it running. But there were some other major changes that affected our business, so to speak. First of all, we were very lucky that when we did our renovation and refurbishment, we got all the money before the economic crisis. So we had really lots of money to spend. But of course, after reopening, we were really faced with this crisis. So we had severe budget cuts by the government. And that meant a reduction for exhibition, marketing, and visitor research. What really affected us, that this is the photo, was the reopening of our famous Rijksmuseum in 2013. That attracts now, last year they attracted 2.4 million visitors. And together with the Van Gogh Museum on the Museumplein, the Museum Square, and the Museum of Modern Art, they really made it happen that lots of foreign tourists now come and visit Amsterdam. There are even coming complaints now from the people in Amsterdam who live in the city center. So that's also a sort of a way to explain why we attract a little bit more foreign tourists. But a lot of the Dutch public also went to see the Rijksmuseum, and which, of course, when you are in Amsterdam, please go. It's a wonderful museum, but it really serves as a magnet within the Amsterdam museum world, and all the other museums have experienced that in their visitor numbers. And also what was important, after such a big project, also people leave, so you have no continuity, for example, in the marketing department. We had new directors, and that, of course, also changes the way you work as an institution. I would like to focus now for the coming 5 minutes on some of the projects we did and share with us the result and what we learned from it. In 2013, we opened a temporary exhibition on the history of slavery and slave trade. That's a very difficult topic in Dutch history. We called it the Dark Chapter. And we chose as an audience group for this exhibition families and school groups to make them acquainted with this relevant but very difficult topic in Dutch history, so not so much on the already well-educated and well-informed traditional museum visitor. We developed it with an international advisory board because it was such a difficult topic. We had David Fleming from the Slavery Museum in Liverpool on our board, who gave some very important advice. But we also incorporated members of the communities who live in the Netherlands now, who are of slave descent, for whom it is a very important, but again, a very emotional topic, and there are lots of different opinions within those communities of how to deal with this part of history. What we did is we took a recent doctorate thesis. It's a story about one specific slave ship that was shipwrecked with all the slaves inside, and we presented it as a sort of crime scene, like the CSI method, to make it also more recognizable for these families with children and school groups that would visit the exhibition. And we ended the exhibition with, we call that a discussion area, with all sorts of statements about slavery, where you as a visitor should make a decision. You could either vote yes or no, and you could leave a statement. It was the first time we did such type of, really getting the visitor involved. Well, the visitor gave an average of 8 for the exhibition, but we also found out that very few people actually came to the museum for this exhibition, because it is such a difficult topic and not very sexy. But most of the people who were in the museum did visit it, so did see it, and were very impressed, because we had really interviews with people visiting this exhibition. So it was important to also tell this story. We had a high-packed education program for school groups, And to do so, we have a group of 25 museum teachers, and we gave them extra training because it is such an emotional topic that, especially with school groups where there are children of slave descent, they can start crying, and it's lots of emotions, and we really had to teach the teachers how to deal with such big emotions. And one of the things David Fleming told us, don't keep it in the past. Also involve and start talking with these children about modern types of slavery, because otherwise they can't relate to it. If it's not their background or there's nothing to do with it, it's something that happened 150 or 200 years ago. How is it relevant for me? And I spoke to one of the museum teachers who had a school class, I think they were 14 or 15 years old, mostly of Moroccan descent, and they weren't all into this subject, and it was the first time that somebody asked them, have you ever thought where your sneakers are made, and who made your sneakers? And what about your cell phone? And it was something they had never thought of before. It was very relevant, but also difficult to relate a modern day topic with a topic from the past. But that was the only way also to start a sort of thinking process with these Amsterdam school groups. And we were very proud that a sort of a smaller version of the exhibition was organized in 2 locations in Suriname. That's our former colony on the north coast of South America, where the Dutch had all these plantations, where all these slaves worked. But this was a very important project for us, also working with community groups and with an advisory board. We also started changing some of these exhibitions in the wing. In East Wing, we changed the atlases for a new exhibition, the globes for the atlases. And last year, we created a new family exhibition, Live on Board. It's like a big game. And the starting point for them, again, listening to your public, we replaced the least popular family exhibition, so just looking at the rates the public gave for all the exhibition we had on. We chose the theme Live on Board because it was the most popular theme in visitor research, asking the visitors, and what topic did you miss? Unfortunately, here comes in the crisis. I had it was about between 50 to 75% less budget to spend on this exhibition compared to when we were in this whole refurbishment process. There were 2 major results, 7.9 from the visitor, but again, also with this money, I'm not completely aware how the situation in Denmark is, but fundraising for just one small exhibition is much more difficult than when you have a huge project. Much more people or funds or sponsors want to be part of a very big project. The larger, the better, compared to just one simple exhibition. Then a few minutes, another interesting thing I would like to share. We also think about when we have this permanent or semi-permanent exhibition, how can we market them by organizing special programming. This is the exhibition The Tale of the Whale in the West Wing. In the exhibition, we started a collaboration with the World Wildlife Fund, and in 2013, we tried to move that on to a next level by organizing special activities in the summer holiday. And we started with a modest program, and now, over the last 2 years, we actually, by adding more content and more different activities and all adding different extra partners, smaller museums, and this year also a Center for Nature and Marine Life on the island of Texel in the north of Holland, we really developed it into a platform for education on the history of whales and whaling. And we tested every year, every summer, what the public thought of the program and used this as input for the next year. And then I already mentioned the foreign tourist. Well, I always said when the museum opened, no audio tour in this museum because it wasn't designed that way, but because of all these foreign tourists coming and visit and wanted to see in 1 hour the highlights of the collection, we did develop last year a highlight tour from the collection with a very old-fashioned audio tour, which you just pick up and hold in front of scan. And now we have about 60% of our visitors using this audio tour. Another example, I have a few minutes left, so I'll go quickly through it. Our Royal Barge, which we added last year to the collection. It's in fact a sort of object-based exhibition. It's the barge, a rowing barge that was built in the beginning of the 19th century by King William, one of the great-great-grandfathers of our King Willem Alexander. And we had now public programmings, workshop for rowing, but also for traditional museum visitors, a restorer explaining about the restoration. And then I would like to, that's, I think, an important thing I would like to share. We also have commercial events in our museum, and we have been criticized for that as well. This is a premiere of a film. We had a film with all famous Dutch actors about a 17th century Dutch admiral. And another example, I'll just go back. That's very recent because the Netherlands has the presidency of the European Union this half year. We are the host location of all the ministers who come. So we rented our museum, and what we do is that we have accompanying programs. When we have such big events where we make a lot of money with, we have explaining to the public why we do it. And now, my last slide. And for the future, there are two very important things ahead. We just got a lot of money from the National Lottery to create an augmented and virtual reality experience around our ship, the Amsterdam, which I'm very looking forward to. It's again a sort of new development also in storytelling. And the Navy dockyard is being developed. It's the area next to the museum. And it's turned into, it used to be a very closed-off area, and it's now slowly developing as a new center for the people of Amsterdam, and also for all sorts of scientists and entrepreneurs who work on sustainable projects. And that's also, again, an opportunity for us to see with whom we can work and with whom we can tell the story of the maritime history of this area. But again, focusing on the audience group that we choose. Thank you.